This is Thursday, May 6th, a little bit before 7:30. And as you can see, Dr. Paul's here and Miss Courtney Lee Smith is here, and our partners are here with us. But because of my lack of organization skills, and that's probably a whole other conversation we could probably have of organization skills of and how we could throw families off. And today, Fulton's actually doing a job because of the mix up, and Miss Janine's doing another job because of the mix up. But we're here because we can and we promise. So thank you for dealing with me also. You're like my second wife here, so this is good. How you been?
I am great, and that whole organization thing is a topic in relationships that can really be a strain. So since we are here and on that note, I think we should kind of carry that out. And I'm gonna say this, my husband intended to be here. We just had a little snafu and a communication where we thought we were not gonna go on, but
Right.
since we are, we wanted to make sure we went on and showed up for everybody else who is tuned
Right.
in. So we're definitely going to open the floor for anybody that has any particular questions tonight. But I do want to stay on that when you're talking about communication
Right.
and calendaring and scheduling and being very strategic in relationships. It's just like tonight is an example of when we change our mind and change our mind.
Right.
What everybody says, we have your prerogative is what Bobby Brown always said, your prerogative. And a lot of times our prerogative, we have the free flow to change our mind or to leave options open. But sometimes that does not mean everybody has that same flexibility.
Yeah. So does that can it create animosity? I'm sure it can. Or should it create animosity?
It can create animosity when there is a recurring behavior of that action. So let's say, pretend tonight was the first snafu. We've never had a calendaring issue. We've never had a communication issue. So we can get back and say, okay, what is it that I need to do to fix this?
Right.
Do I need to, make sure I don't double book appointments, to make sure, all of these things go on. But if it becomes a habit, what it means is really your partner begins to the fact, even though you make an appointment, even though you schedule something, you will probably not get them to be in attendance because they're not going to take you scheduling things seriously. It's kind of like promising a little child, I promise I'm going to take you to the circus this weekend, and you've said that 10 times, and now they're not going to even be there when you show up eventually, if you eventually show up.
Is that, for me, I don't think it's a trust issue, even if it happens. I don't know. For me, and I don't know why I don't think, even if I or someone else has done this repeated, I don't think it's lack of trust. I don't have that. Is that something that it's just me? Or because I know people can go, well, now I'm not able to trust you.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily trust, but it's a pattern of behavior
in
that particular area. So that means, okay, either now I need to be your reminder, or now I need to be your follow-up person for everything. And so is that a role that I have to take on? That's a conversation that needs to be had, but it's not necessarily trust, but it's a pattern that is being formed. So it's not saying your partner distrusts you, but it's saying, okay, I'm going to have to go back and double check every time you say we got an appointment at this time or we got something set up at this time. I'm going to have to go back and double check and see if this is the reality. So it's like, earlier, maybe an hour or two ago, we had one communication, then an hour later, we had another communication.
Right.
So it's at which point, you have to slow down with that person and say, which one of these communications are we going to go with so I can make a decision, because at some point, the other person has made a decision to do something based on your communication,
right?
Whether it's the initial conversation, the second conversation, or the third conversation. some type of choice has been made. Either the person sits around and say, well, wait and see, let me see what happened. Or they said, okay, well, I'm going to move on past this moment. And the only thing about that, then it ends up just me and you. So, and that's how those, conversations go. So it's not necessarily a trust. I wouldn't say trust. I just say a pattern. So we just have to worry about the patterns that we set up in our relationships.
How can someone find the pattern? Is it a number thing you like? Is it a numbered sequence? Is it a time frame? Like, how would you follow? As a science guy in my head, a pattern is something that is consecutive.
Well, that's why I said it depends on if you do it more than one time. That's why I say it creates a pattern. So having said you were going to do something one time and have to change it or modify it does not make that a pattern. It just makes it that particular incident did not work out. But if it continually is something that we always have to readjust the schedule or not sure if the schedule is going to happen, then it becomes a pattern. They say a pattern really is anything that you do twice because you see it twice.
Right.
That's a pattern because that means you got something to add up. But in the reality in relationships, what they say, if you see it once, the person has revealed their real selves. That's a theory that I have heard.
I don't agree with that.
Well, I'm getting ready to say something about that now. There are such things as red flags.
Okay.
And I agree that there are red flags, but you need to make sure if the red flag is not triggering something from the past that is causing you to fear it. It's not a reality. Some flags are dead where they are. It's a stop sign. It's a reality. It is. But there are so many other red signs that are not all stop signs. So you have to clarify and get very clear on what the red sign is that is giving. So, that's just like on a dashboard of the car. You got a lot of lights that come on. What does this specific light mean? All of them don't mean that the car getting ready to stop and smoke.
Right. Like, because I believe, like you said, when it comes to red flags and working with trauma, I actually think there's signals, but I just think it's information that you have to dig into, right? Like the lights in the car. Like, is it one of these things that's triggering the other thing, or like it's just more information for you? Because going back to the sequence or the pattern, it happens now, it skips 4 times, and it happens again. A person who's very gun shy with patterns and red flags, they might say that's a pattern because it's happened twice. But a person like myself, I would say, but it didn't happen consecutively, so you can't count that as a pattern. But when someone thinks of a red flag, they may think of it as it is a pattern.
Well, I would say red flags and patterns are different.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. A red flag is a real light. That is a real. It's something that's real. Now, the difference is the diagnosis could be different based on the situation.
Right.
And I'm gonna give you a car analogy, and I really hate that Fool is not here because I love these car analogies. But if we're going to like the dashboard, everybody assumes when the check engine light comes on that there is only one thing that can be wrong. A lot of people, first thing they assume when the check engine light come on is the O2 sensor. That O2 sensor is bad because, okay, or I need to just get it cleaned out. But a lot of times what it means is that you went too far and you got to get a whole new catalytic converter. So it's just depending on some of the different expenses. And that's why I say it is a real red flag. There is a real issue. But now, what is the real issue? A lot of us like to say we have identified what the red flag is, and we've already just cut the car off and sold the car before we understand what the real red flag is, And I say that because my husband goes out to see a lot of customers, and the first thing that they've heard, we need a new transmission and we need a new engine. People pick the biggest, most expensive parts they can yank out of a car because they're part replacers. But the difference is he does the diagnosis and he can tell you, because he could have yanked out your transmission and put a new one in, but you still have the exact same problem because it was really something, a wiring problem or a computer problem that wasn't fixed when you yanked out the transmission. So we got to be careful. That's why I say the light is real. Now, when we're talking about red flags, the light is real. So we cannot belittle when people see the light. The light is real now. What the light means is I need to figure out what is really going on. Is it something, the history of this vehicle? Was it in an accident? You know, have they been fed bad fuel? You know what I'm saying? Or is it, does this car just need some maintenance because it's that year, make, and model? You know, so that's what I'm saying. You have to go through the gamut of things before you just say a red flag and identify what it is. And now that's why I say now red flag. But now a pattern. Okay. Let's talk. I'm gonna stay in this car now.
Yeah, because it's actually so pertinent because it gives you such a concrete understanding of how we actually do things.
Yeah. But now let me tell you about a pattern. Patterns. See, now red flags are warnings, because now if you continue to drive that car with the O2 sensor and the catalytic converter messed up, of course you're gonna have additional damage. Those are warnings. Warnings that something is going wrong. Okay. Patterns are behaviors. So like a car behaving a certain way because we're doing something inappropriately with the car. So for instance, we're Honda people. A lot of Hondas have these little click lights on them. If you don't turn your key, you're supposed to wait till the light go off before you turn your key. Bad behavior is you just jump in the car, throw the key on, and then you're singing, "Why won't the car start?" Okay, the pattern is because you got behavior that keeps doing this. But see, now the car started the first 10 times, even though you had bad behavior. So you missed the pattern. But the pattern is still there. The behavior is still there. You just missed it.
You know, I have a relationship that came up because we were going to have this conversation and someone put this on me and I was going to bring it up because someone says that this person promised that they would change their behavior.
Okay.
And I had said, well, how do you know when the pattern changes? Was that something I could have asked, or do you think you would have approached it differently? Because I think the person promised to change the behavior, but you need a longer time to see if he changes his pattern.
Okay, let's go into a change of behavior. So let's say, for instance, something that I've been accustomed to doing for, well, I'm not gonna tell my age, so let's put word.
Wait a minute. You can tell your age if you can tell me what group did Patti LaBelle first start singing with.
I'm not saying that. But
she wore the big hat. Remember the
yeah. But the thing is, so let's say I've been doing something for 10 years, and that's a long time to be caught into a behavior. And I can make it even simpler than that. When me and my husband met, he had already been married 32 years. So he had a set behavior and a set pattern because he was used to being with a woman for 32 years. So that was his pattern and his behavior. But he had to recognize I was a different woman. And that was a promise he made me. I'm going to change to be the husband that you want me to be, not the husband I was with somebody else. But the thing is, I didn't say, well, you got to change next week, you know? So the thing is, when he told me he was going to make the change, I couldn't say, well, these are the 5 things that I want you to change, and I want them changed by next week. The thing is, I had to let him recognize the things that would not work with me. And once he recognized that those things were not a part of the relationship that I wanted, he made the adjustment to change them. And I saw them. Now, I'm not going to tell you I saw them like going to the next block.
Right.
Because it took him 32 years to get these habits. But the thing is, I saw him putting daily effort and actually taking the time. When the incident was getting ready to happen, he was like, okay, I know I'm getting ready to do it. Or even after he did it, he would come back and say, hey, I know that's something that I have to adjust. So he was aware that that was a behavior he needed to change. So he even brought it to me, recognizing, say, okay, I know this is something that's not going to work in our relationship. I apologize for it. I'm going to work on it. I've noticed it.
But that's just tremendous as a human being. Now you're talking about him being a man and being a black man. That's just tremendous as a human being to be aware of your personal self, right? And I know Fulton, he's in my head a lot throughout the weeks, and like be intentional about what you're going to do and who you want to be for the person you're going to be with. Be very intentional about that. And it's true. I think that there's situations where younger couples have children, and the behavior that maybe one or whoever there's making isn't beneficial for the couple and for the small kids. Now, is that a time we can wait on that? I mean,
Okay,
as
so
far as putting right?
I'm gonna be very transparent, and this
Yeah.
is something, and y'all can go back and look at other videos and recordings. So if Fulton was here, and I was gonna talk in his voice for him right now, this is what he would say when we met. I had a teenage daughter that lived in the house, which she lives with us with a grandchild now. So the difference is there. He didn't just have to adjust to me. He had to understand her personality as well. So there is when you're talking about a whole blended family, we're talking about a blend. And the one thing that I did not do was get in the middle of them. I never refereed for them. That I don't care what my daughter said happened. I don't care what he said happened. I always told them, figure it out. Y'all got to figure it out. Y'all got to break that communication. You're going to have to figure out, what do you want your all's relationship to look like? And you got to figure out how to understand her for you. I said, I've understood her. I've been with her since the day she was born, So now you have to figure out in this space, what type of relationship do you want to have with her? And today she probably number one over me. He'll probably kill and steal more. That's how tight their relationship is now. And that's what I'm saying. You have to let everybody build their own relationship and can't expect for it to look like your relationship. At the end of the day, my child know I will stop breathing for her. But the thing is, in that place, you can never expect somebody else to be you.
It is. We do not, and I'm so glad, again, it's a blessing to be part of with you and Fulton and Janine because I don't think we don't understand our awareness or lack of awareness when it comes to relationship with ourselves and with our spouses or with whoever we're coupling with. Do you find that to be true, that we're just not putting in the hard work? A lot of times
we don't put in the work.
That's the hard work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I say put in the work, first of all, we don't spend enough time trying to know ourselves. And like you say, the awareness component. Fulton's very aware of himself. He don't have a problem telling his age, but I'll let him tell it. So, but he's very aware of himself, and he knows where he has picked up habits and behaviors from, and he can tell you an attribute, point to say, okay, this might have been right for then, but it won't work for now. And that's what we have to understand. Just because something worked then don't mean it was right. So we have to really release some of those things just because we did them. Those patterns, those behaviors, those lights that we let stay on in our previous relationships in our life, they might not function in this new vehicle. And that's the thing. When you became combined with somebody else, you became a new vehicle.
When it comes to young couples, how do you think we can get this related to them so they get it? Because people getting together, hell, I got together with my first wife when I was in my 20s, right? So it is not an age issue. There's still this.
It's an evolution issue,
there is,
a maturity issue. Yeah. Because the thing is, you can get married in your 20s and it worked for the first 5 years, but you don't continue to learn that person, or you don't continue to observe that person and see who they've become, because the 20-year-old person that you married, when they're 25 years old, they've learned different things, or their roles in the relationship have changed. Like maybe when you were 20, you didn't have kids. Now 25, you might have 3 or 4.
Right.
So the responsibilities and the maturity, and that's why I say you have to stay evolving, stay learning, stay having the ability to grow and mature yourself. Because if you allow yourself to stay in that 20-year-old, when I married you, these were the things that you liked about me, that's great. But now can we evolve and find new things that we can do together, grow together? You know, it's got to be a lot more than just this basic platform. Yes, we got to understand the basics of each other. And that's one thing I truly understand the core of my husband. There are some basic things, you know, I like some people, you can say, these are some things I know they won't never do. And, you know, everybody says you should never say that about anybody. But let me tell you, I know the core of and I know some things that he will do now.
Yeah.
If you take him to the limit, he will do them. But there are some basic core things that how he treat people that I know if you came to me and told me my husband did that, I would know that's not the truth. You know, so that's how you have to know your mate. You have to know your mate to the point. Nobody can bring something to you because you know them better. You even know them better than they know themselves. Like, my husband can tell if I'm doing a show, he can say, you weren't feeling really well. I saw it in your face. He said, your message was great, but you were not on 100. Something was wrong. Something was off. He can just tell by looking at me on the video. He can just tell where I am, or if I was just rushing or whatever it was. Nobody else on the camera can tell. He can tell you that if I went to a photo shoot. He said, you really weren't feeling that, were you? You know, so he can tell you how I'm feeling. Of course, he can tell you how I'm feeling. He'll tell you based on how I cooked. So, I mean, but all those different things, he's always in tune. He was like, okay, I know you were extra happy today by the way this food tastes. So it's all those, you know, different entities. You have to really, and your mate appreciates that because then they know that you are observing and really in tune to what is going on in their life.
And I was just telling Janine that I said I'm a mood person. It's not so much what you say or what you think. I feel people. That either will push me or pull me. And that's we were on this hike and she had asked me a question and I said, you know, I love who you are. I love what you're. To me, it's just about I have to feel your moods, you know, and where you are and how you are and how you respond. Because there's things that you respond to that my body emotionally won't agree with, especially if it's something like if she's cutting off someone, she'll cut someone off, right? And she may believe it's not a cutoff or she's whatever, and it bothers me because it's not the cutoff or the speed, it's maybe how she did it that I took an energy from. And that's how I feel. I mean, that's how I live, you know, and I don't, it's not so much what you say, it's not so much what you do, it's a feeling I get. And I know that's how our relationship goes. It's about how are you feeling today? Because that is a difference between what am I thinking today.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because my thinking can be totally different from my feelings. But the thing is, what we have to realize is that we can't live in our feelings because our feelings can fluctuate from moment to moment to moment, not even day to day, but from moment to moment. And I can say that, you know, mostly as women, we get caught up in our feelings a lot. And like you say, men can feel them, men can fill up but the thing is, if men realize our feelings don't last that long, so if they allowed us that moment to get out whatever it is, we could usually get past that feeling. But a lot of times the discord comes before we can even move, and then the feeling becomes more heightened than it was. And as I said, we can't live in our feelings, we can't respond in our feelings, and we really have to get control of our feelings. We have to address them and say they're real, but we have to understand the other people that we're dealing with. And I say that because for me, I have to not respond to people sometimes the way they respond to me, you know, like crazy. And say that, because a lot of times Fulton is in a place where he is in work and he needs something right now, and it might not come off necessarily in the tone or the way that I specifically like it, but I understand where he's coming from,
Right.
so I'm not offended in that place. And that's the thing where it comes where you can understand where the person is coming from, the deeper level beyond what they're feeling, because he's feeling anxious. He feels like, okay, I can't do this. And he does not like to be in a place where he feel like he needs somebody to actually fix this. And then he don't want me to definitely catch an attitude because he needs me, So it's that place when you're needed, don't over lord it on somebody with a bad attitude. Just show up for that person, kind of show up for that person and say, okay, I'm not going to push you into a worse mood. I'm going to help pull you out of this mood. So whatever it is you've come to me for, how can I help you? How can I serve you? How can I help shift your energy? And that is what we have to do for each other, when we become one, because we do feel each other's energy. So it's like being in a car and it's pulling to the left, but you want to go to the right. So it's like we got to get aligned and back on one accord. And that's what that energy is doing in a relationship. It's pulling us off that one accord together.
And I think as long as it keeps going back to, for me, and understanding my personal self and how I'm giving off energy, right? Because even if I'm giving off energy, not the energy I'm thinking I'm giving off, what is the actual energy that someone's receiving?
Yeah.
Because that's the difference, I think.
Yeah, because a lot of times I'll say, well, I don't have attitude.
Right.
I'll be like, oh, I don't. And he'll be like, well, I sensed it. And it probably was there because I felt like, oh, well, you disturbed me or you came in or something. I didn't necessarily say it in my tone, but it was an energy that he picked up. So we have to realize we cannot discount the energy that somebody else picks up, even though that wasn't necessarily the vibe you wanted to give off. Energy is something we cannot control.
Right.
So the thing is, after the energy is given off, how do you get it to where you can bring it back? That's like that what is it, the controller for your temperature in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now in the house you've got it 80 degrees, it's too hot, you can't handle it, you're both sweating, y'all about to pass out. Okay, that's too hot in the house. Okay, so even though you go take the temperature down real quick and turn on the air, it's not going to cool it off immediately. It takes time for it to get back to the temperature. So you're going to have to do more than just adjust the thermostat. So even going back to adjust the thermostat, you got to turn on the fans. You got to open up some windows. That's what I'm saying. So now you got to open up, bring in some fresh air, a new perspective, let the fans blow in, to change the atmosphere. That's how you push that energy out. And I mean, I could give a real car analogy for that one, but I'm going to leave it right there on the thermostat.
Because Fulton's a car guy.
Yeah.
And Janine teaches CPR. She's a health person. So she's thinking, and so we all have, and that's understanding your mate and how they relate to things. A lot of things that we do and who we are, it's how we relate to other things. Because it's transparent that way. It goes from one thing to the other. It doesn't just say, well, I'm this person over here and I'm this person over here. We're fluid that way. At least I hope we're fluid.
Well, and that's the case right there. You have to make sure that people are not bringing an ambassador to the relationship. I'm pretending to be this person in these particular situations, so I look good and I have a good persona for these group of people, but then I shift and I become somebody else. And so when you're talking about in a newlywed relationship or a younger relationship, not even talking about the age of people.
Right.
Have you shown all of yourself? Have you truly been transparent about who you are? And those are, some real questions you need to ask before you get into a relationship. Have you revealed all yourself to this person? And I don't mean who you're going to become, but who you are right now.
I agree. I think the real conversations people have to have is that it's not so much I want to be this, but I am this.
Yeah. And the thing is, that's where it comes in where you have to be truly aware of who you are. You know, we have a lot of running jokes, me and Fulton together. And when we first met, we called each other. I used to call him Leroy, and he called me Betsy. But I'm gonna tell you behind that, because Fulton sometimes is cuckoo in the brain, as if I didn't already know what his real name was. But I'm going to tell you a little story, if you don't, for everybody who don't know who Leroy Brown is. Leroy Brown was a junkyard dog.
Right.
So the junkyard dog would bark and at everything, but the junkyard dog couldn't bite you because it was chained. And so that means you got a lot of buttons. And when it was funny, he used that as his pseudo name, because actually he was taking on that personality of the junkyard dog.
Wow.
You know,
yeah.
I'm a bark at everything. Anything that rattle my fence, anything that push my buttons or yank my chain, that's what I can relate to. And that's sometimes who we become, is that pseudonym in our name. But he realized, I'm not a junkyard dog. You know, that's not what I want to be called. You know, is like that joke. But, you know, when we joke about calling ourselves something that is not a personality we want to take on. And so that's why I say you have to start speaking to yourself and saying, okay, I am the husband that Janine want me to be.
Right.
God showed me that person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, even at the end of the day, Janine can't even express that, because it's not very clear to her everything, all the dynamics she needs. And those are conversations really that me and Fulton have together. I can't tell you who God needs you to be for me, because, you know, I could pick these things and those not be the things that I need, because sometimes we pick very superficial stuff. You know, so the thing is, you know, Fulton wakes up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He walks the house. He makes sure our day comes in. I mean, he gets back in the bed at later on, but he makes sure that everything is checked. He gets up and put a word out. He gets up and covers the house. So, you know, when you say protect and provide, he's already began that early in the morning for us, you know, so that when I wake up, the atmosphere is already set before I even get up and pray for us. There is already a presence that is there. So that means harmony is already set for us. So it's that path that you have to make there. It's that effort. Sometimes it means just stretching yourself a little bit more. And I mean, I wish Fulton had been here, because he could tell you a little bit more about all of that, but that's in that moment.
You know, I'm so appreciative, and because I learned from this, and I hope everyone else is learning from this. I hope people who have questions, they can put it in the comment, they can, you know, put it in the chat, they can put it on whenever they share it, like it, because we talk about relationships, but we talk about the development and the create, because you have to create the relationship. Yeah. And that's the one thing, you know, even I remember Fulton said this too. He goes, you got to be intentional about what you're trying to create. Because if you're not,
a lot of times we build monsters.
Right. We build monsters. I call them the Frankenstein. It's my Frankenstein theory. We end up creating this Frankenstein, and all of a sudden we're chasing it down with pitchforks and light and torches. Or let's kill the monster. Hell, you created the monster.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. It was another show, I think 2 days ago, I had an interview on, and it was about the seeds that we've planted in our relationship. We get mad when weeds come up. But I mean, we threw out the seeds of weeds. You know, we get mad when that happens. But I mean, what seeds have you thrown out? You know, so what are we throwing out that's not going to end up being pretty? You know, we might not see it right now because we just see it as something we're throwing out. So we are not very careful, like you said, the intentional way, and the things that we're planting, the things that we're nurturing in our relationship. So it's very, very, I mean, our relationship, I can say, is very intentional as far as how we communicate, how our day is going to look for us. And I can say, I know I got the best husband in the world, because he's the most flexible. You know, if I say, hey, I need you to do this, be there, he don't never say, well, why? Because he knows there's a legitimate reason, and it falls within the plan of something that is for our greater good. He never says, what kind of craziness you got us doing? You know, he's like, okay, I know it might not be comfortable, but I know it's going to work out for our greater good. So he is very flexible with that. And that's why I said you have to find how that looks for you all. You know, how that looks for you all. And that's for anybody that's on the line. What does that flexibility look like without there being a whole lot of friction when you have a conversation.
Well, we ran through that hour pretty fast, and that was, and we're missing our partners, and we do. I apologize to Fulton. I apologize to Janine. I apologize to you, and it was all my mess up. But I'm glad we were able to have this conversation for ourselves, for me, and for anyone else listening. So yeah, we will be here next week on time. So I love anything you want to let us know before we take off, Miss Courtney.
Did we stay on here for an hour?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I thought we had got on here at 7:30. Okay. I'm my time is messed up, but that tells
Maybe
you
we did. Yeah, it's 35:19. So it was, I thought we started, but it's 35:19.
So we got a little bit long.
Yes, we got.
But I want to put this out because I know a lot of people don't like necessarily commenting on social media. So
especially when personal.
Yeah, because you might have a really specific question or issue. So I am going to give you my my email, and anybody for this month of May, this whole month of May, I'm going to open up some appointments on my schedule to actually do some coaching sessions for some couples who might be going through some newlywed issues, you know, because I right here, you know, we just got through with all these April showers, all this rain. You know, we might not want to see some of the stuff grow in May that we planted back in April.
Those weeds gonna pop up.
That's right. So I'm gonna help you do some weeding, some tilling of the ground to make sure that those things do not pop up in your relationship. This may help with a little communication skill, do some activities that will help that. So if you want to send me, and my email is Courtney@relationshipservicestation.com, and I'm gonna tell you it's Courtney without a U or without a Y, so it'll help you out. Because if you're not on Facebook, you probably can't see the correct spelling of it if you're on the YouTube watching it or even in the replay. So that is CORTNE@relationshipservicestation.com. And I am going to open up my calendar, and that is for the first 10 people. The first 10 people that email me, you will get a free session. So beyond the free sessions that we're giving here on every Thursday, because you can submit some of your questions and issues to Dr. Dyer, and they will pose those questions to us. You all can submit them to him and his messenger. So making sure we're not just covering some, you know, we don't want to just discover the low issues. If somebody's really going through something and we really need to talk about it and dig into it. And one thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to tell who asked me about it. I'm not going to get into your personal information, but I do want to make sure that we dig into that. I am a certified life and relationship coach, and I do deal with grief and loss. And people say, well, what does that have to do with relationships?
Wow.
It's making sure that your good relationships don't die just as well. You know, so I think we think about grief and loss as only as somebody passing away or transitioning from their physical body to their spiritual body. But I don't want people to go through separation or divorce. So we are in a preventive maintenance. So I like to say that when you're talking about your car, I want to be in a preventive maintenance world. So just kind of like talking about, you know, still on the lights and the pattern. So what you got to say to me, Doctor?
I think it's funny how you said about grief. I think people also have grief about life they thought they would have.
Yes, that's a very big issue, and that's why I say grief and loss. I always tell people we're all grieving. We all grieve.
I agree. We
just don't learn grief skills.
Correct. Yeah.
We don't learn grief skills, even though we know grief is a part of life. It's amazing. I need to coin this phrase. Grief is really having a tantrum with God. It's saying, I didn't get my way. And that's really all it is God, you didn't give me my way. God never said that's what he was going to do for you anyway.
Well, they say God is always on time, and this may not be the time you want him to be.
Yeah, it just might not be your time, but it's God's time. So if he's on time and this is his will, not your way, and those are the things that we need to, he didn't give us our way, but it's still within his will. And those are the things that we grieve our way, you know. Of course, our way is we would never want anybody in our life to die.
Right.
You know, we want everybody to live eternally here in the flesh, but that was never God's design.
No.
So that's the whole point is, do we really understand what God's design and his will was for our life in order to work it out? So when we can get more in tune to that, we can start grieving with those proper tools. So that's one of the things I teach people, some basic grief tools, grief skills. So when anything comes up, from the little things to the big things, they have the skills in place that it don't derail them and they don't get stuck on the side of the road.
Is it, you think, you know, when it comes to grief, I I don't think there's another way of putting it, but I don't think people we don't learn it because we're afraid to ask for it because grief is such a negative connotation word we took on because it has
Mhm.
something to do with death or loss. But it's really just another lesson.
Yeah, grief is a shifting. Grief is something all of us carry every day. Grief is a part of life.
Right, right,
And
right.
if we normalize grief and that cycle, then just like in your relationship, you wouldn't stay mad at somebody. That's the same thing. We are grieving a segment of our relationship or some way we thought somebody was going to be because this is what we wrote in our mind. This is how this person
Hmm.
is going to be. This is how this person is going to act. And when it doesn't happen, we grieve those things. But do we grieve those things to the point that we're able to release them? Or do we grieve them to the point that we actually kill the rest of our
Relationship.
relationships?
Mm. And I,
And
and I,
that's where it is. We become a weed that choke out everything else in our life.
and that's because we don't even understand that we're grieving.
Yes. And a lot of people don't grieve. They don't. Um, a lot of people think mourning is the same thing as grieving. Mourning is what you do when you do the crying and the wailing and the deep sorrow that you have as a mourner. And that's usually that deep thing when the announcement is made. You go through a
Mhm.
process of that mourning. But unfortunately, a lot of times people don't move past the graveyard. They died with the person.
Mm.
They stay there mourning so long that they
That
die
they
with the
stayed
person.
there.
They don't transition into a grief process. They just continue to
Mourn.
mourn.
I just I hope people really understand the difference and ask that question. If you don't, listen to key. I think this is the key. If you're just not sure, ask. Like,
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of times, hey, I'm going through this, I'm doing this. And that's why I said I've opened up the email so you all can communicate with me. And let me make it a little bit easier because everybody not an email person. I'll give you my phone number where you can text me. And it is 678-718-5019. So you can text me on there if you're going through something. And we're going to make that about grief. So just text me the word grief. That way I'll know the difference of who's communicating with me. If you want
mhm.
us to talk about some grief, and I don't mean just somebody who's physically transitioned from their physical body to the spiritual body, but I mean any type of grief that you're dealing with and you want some help walking through it.
It,
So
if I've always said that everyone's gone through trauma and have trauma they need to deal with in their life, I agree with you. I think everyone's grieving that they don't even know that they are.
yeah, it's a lot of people grieving just losing their job and they
Mm.
can't find a new job because they have not released the fact that they need to move on from the past job. Is in their mind, this is the only skill that I have, this is the
Mhm.
only thing that I know how to do. But God has said, no, I have given you many things and you just won't move past that.
What if your spouse is grieving for the job that the like your partner, you lost your like the one partner lost their job or hasn't gotten a job. This Your spouse or your partner could be grieving and really harboring some type of some feeling some sort of way that their partner isn't gotten past it or moved on.
Well, the thing is, both people are probably grieving.
Right.
They're probably just grieving in a
Different.
different
Yeah.
way. I can't think of anybody who has lost a job and they're not grieving in some form or fashion. They just have not done it out loud. You know,
Mhm.
they're telling everybody, I'm okay, I'm dealing with it. But the thing is, if you have not actually went through particular processes to reinvent yourself and say, this is where my new direction is. If you have not identified that new direction and see what the plan is, that means you still haven't grieved. Because grieving means I've come out the ground, I've bloomed, and I've turned into something different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I explain to people. If you have not grown, if your response and your reactions have not changed to things, that means you're still in a grieving place too. And yes, both people can grieve, because you can grieve the financial loss, you can grieve the consistency that was there, you can grieve the routine that existed. All of those things happen, especially in this COVID place. In this COVID place, if we know the reality, a lot of people got divorces because they spent more time. A reality of their relationship was revealed because of how much time they were spending together. You know, they were actually pretending to be blind or ignoring what was originally going on because they were spending so much time outside of the home. They didn't have to deal with any of the issues in the home.
And once they got thrown into this box, it probably lit a candle. It was probably a candle box that just got lit up in flames. What is it called? What's one of those match boxes that just goes up?
Yeah,
a tender box. That's what I was thinking of.
But it goes back to the fire could have been put out. Mm-hmm. It could have been put out if the work was put in and said, okay, I'm gonna deal with part of this box got burnt down and we're gonna have to rebuild it. Or the whole box burnt down around us and we're gonna have to be rebuild it. But a lot of times, most of us don't allow everything to burn down around us because we still trying to hold on to the box. If we let the box continually burn down around us, we will get a new sense of freedom anyway. That we don't have to look like everybody else that's in the box. We don't have to do the things that everybody else in the box is doing. So if you're comparing your relationship to a box and not saying, okay, what is it that our individual relationships needs to look like versus their candle box, all those little tinder boxes look the same. So a lot of us, what we do is try to grab a fire extinguisher, put out the fire so we can still live in the comfortable box of those relationships. So sometimes you need the fire to let it burn it all down. That way everything can be revealed and then rebuild from there.
I know that we have talked about this on previous shows, that you don't allow people in your relationship that's going to have issues with your relationships, right? But what if you have a friend that you notice that they're not letting that box burn and you're trying to tell them, like, listen, this isn't for you? Is that something we can say as a friend, family, loved one, whatever? Or should be?
You can say it all day long.
Okay.
But telling somebody else a box don't belong to them is usually going to make them hold on to the box even longer. A person is not going to release a box until they're tired of being in the box. Nobody's going to get tired of carrying a burden until they're tired of burden. And unfortunately, sometimes giving unsolicited advice to somebody actually deters your relationship with that person.
It does. So it hurts.
You have to be careful. Even if your advice was solicited, you still have to make sure the advice is given in a way where they come to the revelation on their own.
Yeah, that's and we have to be patient.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. We try to push people out of their boxes, and sometimes when we're doing that, we push them further and further in the box. So we have to make sure. And I mean, that as a coach, as a counselor, when you can never tell anybody else what it is they're supposed to be doing, you have to allow them to come to that revelation on their own. And I mean, it's an emotional and a mental exercise. When they put themselves through that emotional and mental exercise, they will come to a final resolution. Now, whether they'll admit it out loud, whether they'll do anything to change that situation, that's totally different. But normally that person within them, they already know the answer to the question. I tell my husband this all the time. I never ask you a question that I don't already know the answer to. And I'm 100% on that. I never ask a person a question that I don't know the answer to. Now, I might not know how you're going to, the energy you're going to give me the answer or the extra, but I already know the answer because I know you well enough to know what an answer to the question is. I've already went through the parameters. Now that's how my mind thinks, because now I I have that capability of discernment that I don't ask you nothing, because something my grandfather said, be careful about asking people questions that you don't know the answer to, because then you don't know how you're going to respond to them. So you have to always keep yourself in a place where you're in control of your response and your reactions in situations. So be careful when you light a match and you're not the one that know how to put it back out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So when you start that question asking, make sure that if you light a fire, you're the one who able to blow it out.
And that goes, and I think that could actually go back to that awareness piece too.
Yeah.
Know yourself. Know thyself. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're not sure how that person is going to come at you, and then they're going to be the person lighting the fire, then you're in trouble, because now you're no longer in the person who's in control of the conversation that you brought.
Now you're both in fire.
Yeah.
now you're both in fire. Now you're both in danger.
Yeah, and that's where it comes. You got to be aware of you, and you got to be aware of other people. And like you said, you're aware of an energy, and sometimes that energy is not necessarily the total package.
Right.
You know, like you say, the energy that you think you're giving off might not be the energy received. So that's the same thing from your mate. That energy they giving off might not be the energy that they want you to receive. So now you receive a percentage of the package, but you have not received the whole conversation because you were so focused on the energy that came with it. So, and you can open up the windows, turn on the fans, adjust the thermostat, and that means your awareness, adjusting that for you. So now that you can hear and be in the same room and be in the presence with your mate to hear everything beyond the energy, and then that's where you can become having that true dialogue. And I mean, it's a growing process. It's a growing process, and I think it was a little different for me and Fulton because I was already used to dealing with people who like to have a little temper, who have a little gruff, and I worked in the law enforcement, so I was used to a certain personality of men that came to the table anyway. So when I put that in the whole thing, God had already prepared me for who he was going to send me.
That's awesome.
So it's that preparation. And I think we all have that preparation. We just don't know how to bring it to the table. You were already prepared for Janine. You just like, okay, you're not bringing it all to the table. You have to, like you said, that awareness of you. You know, I'm a little mature and I become very aware that I can get teacher, preachery to everybody if I don't calm it down. I have to be, okay, this is my child. You know, I can do that, you know, because I've told my daughter, I said, if you were a grown woman, and I mean, she's grown, but she's still my child, but I mean, a grown woman stranger, I would have told you some things that I know would have hurt your feelings and we would have never been able to have a relationship again. You know, and I know I would have, because it was something, you know, but it's that control within us.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. We have to have that control within us. You have to know the triggers and the words that you will say that will permanently damage Janine that you can't take back.
Is it control or is it love? I don't know why I dislike the word control.
Self-control.
The word control.
Oh, just in general.
I think because it seems so.
But if you look up the definition of love according to Corinthians, self-control is a part of love.
Okay.
It is a characteristic of love. Learning to control ourselves, even when somebody else offends us or hurt us, is a part of love.
Okay.
You know, it's our response. I know y'all can get sick of me saying response and reaction, but response and reaction is the key to our whole world working around.
Yeah.
If we can respond and react in everything in love, and I want everybody to know what love is, y'all go look up that scripture. We talk about love in a whole different way. So if we could respond and react to everybody in that way of love, our world would look so different.
Very much so.
Yeah, but the thing is, most of us don't respond to ourselves in love because we are so easily lose control of ourselves. We do. We get caught up in our own emotions, and then we have to do a check and be like, man, why did I say that? Man, why did I do that? You know, it's like we have these conversations with ourselves. Man, if I had just thought for 10 more seconds, that wouldn't have came out my mouth, you know? So it's that place that we really have to say, okay, is that something that is really love? Um,
And I think, with a lot of things I do, civic engagement, stuff like that, if we respond to ourselves in love, we will act in love and things will be produced in love. And we wouldn't have these animosities and these strifes that we have in these streets and all over the place. We have a lot of resentment and anger.
yeah, we have a lot of resentment and anger because there's a lack of awareness of self
Right. Right.
first.
First.
And when you are unaware of self, you don't even realize that you don't love self.
Mm-hmm.
You don't love self. You don't have respect for self. You say you do because you do basic things for yourself. We see love as we clothe, we feed ourselves, we get up and go to work every day. We see that as love. That's not love. Love is actually how we actually respond
To ourselves.
Mm-hmm. How we react to ourselves. But we beat ourselves up. So what makes you think you're not going to treat your neighbor that way?
Right.
And the thing is, the things you usually don't like about yourself are the things that you magnify about another person. So, and I know, in this society, we have this whole black, white thing, but the thing is, there's all of these races and hate. But the thing is, hate is magnified by something that we truly try not to understand. So it goes back to an awareness, as you say. I am aware that you are different. I am aware that you have different feelings. I'm aware that you're going to bring different energy to the table. Mm-hmm. And I'm aware of that. I'm open to it. I'm open to you being different. Mm-hmm. I'm open to you disagreeing with me. I'm open to you not even understanding me, but I'm not even pushing you to understand me. And that's the key. I'm not pushing you to understand me because according to the word, the only thing me and you owe each other is love. And so if we follow out, if I give every man his due that I owe him, it's love. I mean, we got caught all up in this word that you owe me respect, you owe me pride, you owe me this. None of that. All that is death, waiting to happen.
I agree. And I also agree with the idea of it's not so much we have to get into the word of real what love is, right?
Yeah.
And love is an action and love is care. Love is, and you taught me something because I didn't know I didn't know control was part of love, because I think, and it's about being vulnerable. And we've talked about this before. It's okay feeling vulnerable and feeling like you're open.
Yeah.
And you could get hurt.
Yes. But that's a part of love.
That's a part of love.
Yeah, because the main part is I don't hold you accountable for wrongdoing. I don't keep up with it. So that means it says you're going to hurt me.
So how did we get to so many? Because you hear that a lot of youth, I want to be hard. Where do we get that? Is it hard? Basic means you're being negative and you're pushing off someone.
Where do we get that? I won't even say that's youth. I believe that is originally taught just in manhood that you need to be hard, that you need to be strong. It is a generational bringing up. That is what you're culturally or gender specific, whatever it was. People were brought up in that era. And the thing is, you don't allow a person to be their real selves when you tell them they have to be stoned.
Right.
You got to be stoned. Nothing will hurt you. Nothing will cut you. Nothing will affect you. So all you're doing is allowing that person to kill themselves because they're internalizing everything that really does hurt them, that really does cause them pain, and they have no way to put it. And that is why our world look like it does, because we have all of these people exploding their hurt and their pain and their anger and their emotions. That's their response and reaction, because they're not able to talk about it in a healthy environment. So they explode. So the hate that they have for themselves, it explodes on other people, whether it's people within their community or people who look different than them or whatever it is, how it explodes.
And when it explodes, it's violent. There is nothing but violence when it explodes.
Yeah, because that's what it is. It says they're acting in their emotion of anger that has turned into wrath. And then when wrath comes, there is no rational now that is left. And there is definitely, it has burnt up every last bit of love that can exist.
We'll get better, but we do have to put in the work.
Yeah, but the thing is, we're trying to change the world. And when we change ourselves,
The world
automatically other people see us. Your changing of yourself changes the people who see you and you encounter with. And when they see you change, they become a change and they encounter other people. So the change is a chain of events. So it goes back all the way to the beginning of the statement when we talked about patterns and behaviors. If we adjust our patterns and behavior, we don't have another generation that follows our patterns and behaviors. It's an adjustment that we have to make. We cannot say this is the way I am. We cannot say this is the way that we have always been. These are things that we have to change in our adjustments, because if I sit here and say, well, I'm going to always stay the Courtney that I am, that means I would still be a newborn baby.
Right.
That means I never learned how to talk. I never learned how to walk. I never matured past anything. So there is levels that we have to go in life, and there's no certain ages we have arrived. There is just every day we should be becoming a new and better version of ourselves.
Yeah, and the newness takes birth, takes a new beginning. There's new beginnings.
Yeah, and sometimes it may take a full 9 months for that person to have to be reborn again. You know, even when you show up in church and walk up to the altar and say, I believe in God and I confess and I want to be a believer, it is not a magic wand that adjusts your life. What it means is you have a conscious Holy Spirit that speaks to you, but you still make a choice every day. You still make a choice every day.
And be intentional.
Yes, so that's where being intentional comes back to. And that's why I said everything we talked about turns back into intentionality. Everything we do is intentional. Like showing up here right now this time, we had to be intentional and say we're going to push through no matter all the rigor in the road that came before this. Do we intentionally show up, or do we grieve and get caught up in a pity party and then everybody else pays for our attitude and our disposition? So that's the thing. Everybody pays when you make an intentional choice to go down the wrong path, because you are taking the next generation with you. Somebody's watching you choose the wrong path.
And someone's in the wrong, and someone's watching you choose the right path.
Yes, and so that's why I said it takes us individually, all of us, to change and say, I'm going to show up for me. I'm going to grow. I'm going to change. I'm going to mature. And then when they see us in that place, you know, they don't want us to be living as hypocrites and say, oh, I've reached this age and I'm doing all this and doing all of that. And they say, but I know you when the camera's off. You know, so that's what I'm saying. They don't want to see the hypocritic version of that a lot of people present. And I don't mean a perfect, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But they want to see a growing, evolving, maturing version where they are saying, okay, the same thing you were talking about 20 years ago, that's not what you're talking about now.
Well, that's not evolution.
That's what I'm saying. That means you didn't grow. That means you just got stuck.
Right. You got stuck. And who wants to be stuck? And I don't care. I'm thinking about Fulton. Who wants to be stuck in mud?
Yeah. Yeah, but there's a reality of life. A lot of people need tow trucks.
That's a great shirt. That's a great shirt. Sometimes a lot of people need a tow truck. That's a great shirt.
Okay, well, I think now we're probably at that hour for real.
I love you, girl.
It's been a great conversation. I like how it, you know, it took on a real circular motion to let other people understand that it's a bigger cycle in relationships. And I want people to understand it is more than we're talking about here, just marriage.
It really is.
You know, so if you're having an issue dealing with your children, with parents, a work relationship, all of this comes back to the same thing, a self-awareness.
I think everything we are is a relationship. It is the relationship with living. I mean, we are a relationship species.
Yeah, that's why God created us. God created us to have relationships. He created us to have relationships with our finances, relationships with the earth, relationships with each other, our relationship with Him. So all of those things have to have attention. But a lot of times we put so much intention on one aspect of our lives that we lose everything else. A lot of us put intentions on our financial life, because we can see it growing, we can see it changing.
Right.
But we have to put that same much attention on our marriages, on our kids, on our individual personal development, on our relationships with God. And I know that's a lot of intention.
But it is. But if you breathe, you be intentional about your breath you take in, and be intentional about the energy you're giving. It really is.
Yeah, because the thing is, if you put more intention on yourself, that means you ain't got time to be minding nobody else's business. So that's the beauty. I don't have time to mind nobody else's business because I got too many things that God told me to be intentional about.
Well, I want to say Happy Mother's Day. You're coming up. Well, thank you. But you're a mom, and thank you for being a mom and all the things you do, and all the mothers out there who are watching and listening. Happy Mother's Day, and I know we're going to be missing. Like me, I'm missing my mom and Mother's Day when she passes, but I know all the elders in my life that has called me son. I do wish them Mother's Day. Thank you.
Absolutely. That is wonderful. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with Janine and Fulton next Thursday.
Yep, at 7:30. Thank you, Ms. Courtney.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great night. Be safe, be healthy, and be intentional in all the things you do. Thank you.